Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. I inherited my grandfather's warehouse about 4 years ago. It's not huge, about 15,000 square feet, but it's in a decent location just outside the city limits. When my grandfather passed away, I was surprised he left it to me since I'd never shown much interest in his storage business. I was even more surprised to find out he'd been making good money renting out storage spaces to small businesses and individuals. After getting over the initial shock, I decided to continue his business. I cleaned the place up, installed better security, and modernized the rental agreements. Things were going well until about 8 months ago, when the HOA from the nearby upscale neighborhood started causing trouble. The warehouse sits on a 5-acre lot that borders Whispering Pines, one of those fancy developments where houses start at $800K and everyone drives luxury SUVs. The HOA has always been a pain in the ass, constantly complaining about the eyesore of a commercial property near their precious community. They've tried to get the county to rezone the area, they've filed noise complaints about delivery trucks, and they've even attempted to have my business license revoked through various bogus claims. None of it worked because I run a legitimate, fully licensed business that's been there for over 40 years, long before their cookie-cutter mansions were ever built. The real trouble started when they elected a new HOA president, a woman I'll just call Karen. From day one, she made it her personal mission to shut me down. She'd come by the warehouse at least once a week with some new complaint or demand. "Your sign is too bright," she'd say, or "Your dumpster is visible from Whispering Pines Boulevard," or my personal favorite, "The color of your building doesn't comply with our neighborhood aesthetic guidelines." I'd always respond the same way. "Ma'am, I don't belong to your HOA, your rules don't apply to my property." This would inevitably lead to her huffing and puffing about property values and community standards before storming off to plot her next attack. Then one day, about 4 months ago, the visits suddenly stopped. No more complaints, no more threats, nothing. I was relieved, but suspicious. Karen wasn't the type to give up easily. I found out why she'd backed off when I arrived early one morning and noticed an unfamiliar car parked near the back entrance of my warehouse. As I approached, I saw a man carrying a large box toward the door. "Can I help you?" I called out. He looked startled. "Oh, I'm just dropping off some stuff. Karen gave me the code to get in." I was confused. "Karen? Karen from Whispering Pines? She gave you a code to my warehouse?" "Yeah," he said casually. "She told all the HOA members we could use this place for storage if we needed to. Said it was part of some deal with you." My blood was boiling. "There is no deal. This is my private property. Karen has no authority here." The guy looked embarrassed. "Oh man, I'm sorry. She made it sound official. Even sent out an email to the whole neighborhood about it." I asked to see the email and he pulled it up on his phone. Sure enough, there it was. Karen had sent a community-wide message announcing that she'd negotiated access to my warehouse for Whispering Pines residents who needed extra storage space. The email included an entry code for the back door, a code I definitely hadn't given her. I thanked the guy for showing me the email and told him he couldn't leave his stuff. He apologized again and left. Once he was gone, I immediately changed all the access codes and called a locksmith to replace the back door lock, which Karen had somehow compromised. After the locksmith left, I decided to investigate exactly what Karen had been up to. I checked the security camera footage from the past few months and was horrified by what I found. Dozens of Whispering Pines residents had been coming and going at all hours, using my warehouse as their personal storage unit. They were storing furniture, appliances, boxes of junk, even unused gym equipment. Some spaces were packed floor to ceiling with random household items. I was livid. Not only had Karen broken into my property and given access to others, but she'd also been effectively stealing from me. These people were using spaces I could have been renting out legitimately. I called my lawyer, explained the situation, and asked about my options. He advised me to document everything and said I had every right to remove the items from my property. "Send a formal notice to the HOA board first," he suggested. "Give them 72 hours to remove their belongings. After that, you can consider the items abandoned and dispose of them as you see fit." I drafted a strongly worded email to the entire HOA board with documentation of the unauthorized access and a 72-hour deadline to remove all items. I also made it clear that I would be pursuing legal action against Karen for breaking and entering, trespassing, and theft of services. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up with calls from panicked Whispering Pines residents. I let most go to voicemail, but I did answer Karen's call, putting it on speaker so I could record it, with one-party consent in my state. "What is the meaning of this email?" she demanded without even saying hello. "It's pretty self-explanatory," I replied calmly. You broke into my warehouse, compromised my security, and told people they could use my property without my knowledge or permission. That's illegal. You have 72 hours to get everything out, or I'll consider it abandoned property." "You can't do that," she screeched. "Those belongings are worth thousands of dollars. Some people are storing family heirlooms." "Should have thought of that before you broke the law," I said. "This is a business, not a charity. If these items are so valuable, people should have no problem coming to get them within 3 days." "This is completely unreasonable," she huffed. "We need at least 2 weeks. "The email stands 72 hours, I repeated. "You'll be hearing from our lawyer," she threatened before hanging up. The next day, a few residents came to collect their things, apologizing profusely and claiming they had no idea they weren't supposed to be there. Most said Karen had told them it was an arrangement she'd worked out as a community benefit, but the vast majority of the stuff remained untouched as the deadline approached. I received a letter from an attorney representing the HOA claiming I was acting in bad faith and demanding a minimum 2-week extension for item removal. My lawyer responded, reiterating the 72-hour deadline and pointing out that Karen's actions constituted breaking and entering, trespassing, and theft of services, all of which were criminal offenses we'd be happy to pursue if they wanted to continue this battle. The deadline came and went, with only about 20% of the items removed. True to my word, I now considered all remaining items abandoned property. But rather than just throwing everything in a dumpster, I had a better idea. I called a junk removal company and explained the situation. They were more than happy to come out and clear everything away, especially when I mentioned they could keep anything of value they found. I also hired a videographer to document the entire process, just in case the HOA tried to claim I'd damaged or stolen anything. The junk removal team arrived early on a Saturday morning, when I knew most Whispering Pines residents would be home to witness the spectacle. They brought 3 large trucks and a team of 8 workers. It was impossible to miss. As they started hauling out furniture, electronics, and boxes of who knows what, residents began to gather. Some were crying, others were angry, but most just looked shocked that I'd actually followed through on my threat. Karen arrived about an hour into the process, screeching to a halt in her Mercedes SUV. She came storming over, her face red with fury. "Stop this immediately," she demanded. "You can't just throw away people's belongings." "I'm not throwing anything away," I replied calmly. "I'm having abandoned property removed from my warehouse by a licensed junk removal company, as I clearly stated would happen after the 72-hour deadline." "This is theft," she yelled, getting in my face. "No, what you did was theft. Theft of my services. You stole access to my property and gave it away to others. What I'm doing is completely legal. The deadline was clear, and most people chose not to collect their items." By this point, a small crowd had gathered, including several HOA board members who looked very uncomfortable. Karen turned to them. "Do something. Call the police." One of the board members, an older gentleman, stepped forward. "Karen, I think you need to calm down. From what I understand, you gave people access to this warehouse without the owner's permission. Is that true?" "I was negotiating a community benefit," she sputtered. "He wasn't using all that space anyway." The board member looked at me apologetically. "Sir, on behalf of the Whispering Pines HOA board, I want to apologize for this situation. It appears our president acted without board approval or knowledge." This was news to me, and apparently to the other board members as well, based on their surprised expressions. "You mean the board didn't approve this arrangement?" I asked. "Absolutely not," he replied firmly. "We would never endorse breaking into someone's property or using it without permission." All eyes turned to Karen, who was now looking less confident. "I was going to work out the details later," she muttered. "It was a temporary solution for residents who needed storage during renovations." The junk removal continued as we talked. The workers were efficient, clearing out furniture, appliances, and countless boxes. Some items were clearly valuable. I spotted a few antiques and some expensive-looking electronics. Other things were literal garbage that people had apparently been too lazy to take to the dump themselves. As the reality of the situation sank in, residents began approaching me directly, pleading for more time or asking if they could go through the trucks to find specific items. I stood my ground. "The deadline was clear," I repeated. "I gave fair notice." By mid-afternoon, the warehouse was completely cleared out. The junk removal company's trucks were full and they were pleased with the haul they'd gotten. I paid them their base fee, and they left with trucks full of abandoned property they could sell or scrap. As the dust settled, the HOA board members asked to speak with me privately. They apologized profusely for Karen's actions and assured me they would handle the situation internally. They also asked if there was anything they could do to make amends. I thought about it for a moment. Actually, yes. I've been trying to get approval for a new sign and some exterior improvements for months, but keep getting blocked by the county zoning board, which coincidentally has 2 Whispering Pines residents on it. Maybe you could help with that. The board members exchanged glances and then nodded. We can certainly help facilitate that. It's the least we can do. Over the next week, things moved quickly. Karen was removed from her position as HOA president and was facing potential legal action from several residents whose valuable items had been carted away. The HOA board, eager to make amends, helped push through my permit requests for improvements. They even offered to contribute to a landscaping buffer between my property and their community, which I accepted. But the best part? I now had 15,000 square feet of empty warehouse space that I could properly rent out to paying customers. I quickly found tenants for most of the space, nearly doubling my monthly income from the property. As for Karen, I heard through the grapevine that she'd been forced to sell her house and move away after multiple lawsuits from neighbors. Apparently, people don't appreciate having their family heirlooms given away to junk dealers. The HOA and I now have a respectful, if distant, relationship. They stay out of my business, and I maintain my property to reasonable standards. I even get Christmas cards from a few board members who, it turns out, are actually decent people when not being led by an entitled Karen. Looking back, I'm almost grateful for Karen's scheme. Without it, I might never have cleared out the warehouse and maximized its earning potential. My grandfather would be proud. He always said, sometimes you have to stand your ground to come out on top. In this case, standing my ground led to a more profitable business, a more cooperative relationship with my neighbors, and one less entitled Karen in the world. That's what I call a win-win-win. Update, 6 months later. It's been 6 months since the whole warehouse debacle with Karen and the HOA, and I wanted to provide an update since so many people have asked. First off, business is booming. After clearing out all that unauthorized junk, I completely renovated the warehouse interior, creating properly separated storage units with individual security features. I'm now at 95% capacity with legitimate, paying customers, and my monthly income from the property has nearly tripled compared to before this whole mess started. Several interesting developments have occurred with the fallout from Karen's unauthorized storage scheme. 1. Karen has been sued by 14 different homeowners for the loss of their property. From what I've heard, she's already settled with 8 of them for undisclosed amounts, and the others are pending. Her legal fees alone must be astronomical. 2. The police actually conducted an investigation into how she obtained the access code to my warehouse. Turns out she had hired a sketchy security consultant to help her break in. Both she and the consultant are facing criminal charges for breaking and entering. 3. The HOA board made good on their promise to help with my permits. My new sign is up and the exterior improvements look great. They also paid for professional landscaping along our shared border, which includes a nice privacy hedge and decorative fencing. My property value has increased significantly as a result. 4. Remember that junk removal company? They found some surprisingly valuable items among the abandoned property, including a collection of rare vinyl records, some high-end power tools, and even a few pieces of jewelry that had been forgotten in a dresser drawer. The owner of the company felt so bad about the situation that he tracked down the original owners of the most valuable items and returned them. Good people do exist. 5. 3 former Whispering Pines residents have actually become warehouse tenants. They needed legitimate storage after downsizing their homes and approached me about renting space. We had a good laugh about the irony, and they've become my most conscientious tenants. The most satisfying outcome of all this? Karen was forced to sell her house at a significant loss after the HOA imposed massive fines on her for actions detrimental to the community. She moved to another state entirely, hopefully to a place with no HOA for her to terrorize. The new HOA president is a retired judge who runs meetings with fairness and transparency. He's actually approached me about potentially offering a legitimate paid group rate for Whispering Pines residents who need storage, properly contracted this time, of course. My lawyer suggested I install a small plaque in the warehouse office that reads, "The Karen Redemption Project," as a reminder of how this all turned around. I liked the idea so much I had it made, and it now hangs proudly above my desk. Sometimes standing your ground against entitled people can be stressful and exhausting, but in this case, it truly transformed my business for the better. My grandfather's old warehouse is now a modern, profitable enterprise, and I no longer dread interactions with my neighbors. As Grandpa would say, sometimes the worst situations lead to the best opportunities. He was right. I just needed a pushy HOA president to help me see it. The next one is a malicious compliances story. In reviewing some of my best memories of the last few years, I remembered an incident of malicious compliance that I found overwhelmingly satisfying and thought it'd be worth sharing. While not as outrageous as some of the stories here, it left me feeling like I stuck it to our corporate overlords a bit. To set the stage, I moved back to the US to take a job at a pretty big firm where I was also tasked with executive assistant responsibilities. My boss would regularly send me downstairs to our local bank to pick up and deposit cash. Having newly moved back to the US, I needed to set up a bank account for direct deposits, and figured the one downstairs makes sense. Also, it made depositing paychecks quicker and easier. On the day I went to open the account, the manager of the branch sat me down to go through all the paperwork. She was nice enough at first, and I got through everything quite quickly. That said, when it came to the sinuate portion, I thought I'd have a bit of fun with it and create a silly signature. Having just watched a Roman documentary the night before, I made my signature the Great. Obviously, I used my first name in place of condiments. The manager did bat an eye at this, assuming she didn't read it, and said she'd process everything and give me a call when my card is ready to collect. Cut to a little later, I receive a call from the manager saying there's something wrong with the paperwork and I needed to come down to correct it. When I ask what the problem is, she says that I'm not allowed to have a signature like that and I need to redo it using my actual name. I say okay, and that I'll be right down. This kind of pissed me off though, because I've seen wild signatures that hardly resemble letters, yet they were still accepted. I did some quick research and found that legally, a signature can be any mark that I plan on using consistently. It didn't have to be a name nor even resemble letters. Being bored that day, I decided to press it and print out the laws regarding signatures and bring them with me to the bank. When I met the manager, I told her that I'd actually like to keep the signature as is, and provided her with the documents I printed outlining the laws. She did not seem enthused at all, and said she'd need a moment to discuss with her superiors. A few minutes later, she comes back and says, while I'm correct about the law, they require the signature to match the one on my driver's license, since that's the one currently associated with me. I pushed back and mentioned that I wanted to have a new signature, but she was firm on it matching my ID or they wouldn't open my account. Cue malicious compliance. I realized then that since the state I moved to was different from the one I lived in before, I had to legally update my license, so I told the manager I'd think it over and get back to her soon. I hurried upstairs and made a DMV appointment for later that week to get a new license. The day of the DMV appointment, I brought everything I needed to ensure I walked out with a new license. When it was time for me to provide a signature for the license, I again wrote the Great and was again met with pushback. The teller literally said, "Sir, this is the DMV and we don't play games like that." Well, I wiped out the law to show them that I am actually allowed to use this as my signature, and the teller's ego deflated real fast. Long story short, I walked out that day with a shiny new license and my new signature. I drove directly from the DMV back to the bank and met with the teller. I told her that I will agree to sign the documents using the same signature on my license. I don't think she could have looked any more smug. She took me back to the office and sat me down to resign the documents, and I did so as the Great. When she say this, she practically started shouting about how I'm wasting their time and either need to get serious or they'll have me escorted out. This is when I slowly removed my brand new ID and slid it across the desk. Her face went blank, and I honestly couldn't tell what she was thinking. She asked me to leave the office for a moment so she could make a call. 10 minutes later, she comes out and says, while my signature does match the one on my license, they are just refusing to do business with me and asked me to leave. Not knowing the legality of that, I said okay and accepted defeat. I walked back up to my office and told boss that they're not allowing me to open an account. I told him the full story and he actually found it hilarious. He then said that he'd handle it. Later that day, I received a call from the bank saying that they changed their mind and that they've opened the checking and savings accounts I requested. I went to speak with my boss after who said that he had a productive chat with the manager. Knowing how much business he provides the bank, he was happy enough to bluff on my behalf. He essentially told the manager that not allowing me to open an account was directly affecting his business, and that if they don't oblige, he'd close his accounts and take his business elsewhere. Apparently that threat hit hard and the manager quickly backtracked, saying that they never refused my business, just had to get approval from upper management. At the end of the day, I was victorious and still use this signature on all official documents. It's a bit silly, but it's my trophy and a good conversation starter. The next one is an entitled people story. I am back again with another story about people being rude to my puppy. I don't have the energy to type out multiple stories, so I will just keep it at this one, which happened today. I have a 10-month-old European Doberman who is training to be a service dog. Today was a good day, and we went to the city to do some training and visit a few stores. She runs next to my bike, which is perfect because the city is very close to my home and this is her main form of exercise, as I don't have a garden and she is not ready to be off-leash. Anyway, on my way home, we were waiting for a red light. It's at a bit of an odd crossing where if there's more than 2 or 3 people, the line blocks a different cycling lane. Usually there are no people going the direction it blocks off though, so when I was standing there I wasn't looking around. I was looking at my dog and making sure she was sitting, reaching for a treat because she was doing well. Apparently there were some cyclists trying to pass, but because the lady who was ringing her bell didn't have a bell, but one of those clown horns you'd find at a carnival store, it did not register in my mind that a cyclist was trying to get my attention. We were on a busy crossing, and to me it sounded like someone was just being loud and annoying, maybe some kids. Whatever the case, it was obvious I didn't realize someone was trying to pass because I didn't look up from what I was doing. I finally realized what was going on when they did finally pass me. Not sure if there was space all along or if the cyclists behind me made space, but all I know is that when this one lady, the one with the horn, rushed past me, she informed me that if that beast steps back, I will hit it. Such a kind and reasonable response for making you wait for no more than 3 seconds. Like that was literally all it was. All she did was make a fool of herself. My dog just sat there perfectly, and everyone who was waiting as well were as perplexed as I was. The lady in front of me was saying how rude that was. I jokingly said that my dog was raised better than that woman'll. Could I have paid attention a little better? Yes, but I don't think that justifies such a comment. If she was terrified of dogs, she could have waited for a moment or tried to get my attention in some other way, or just pass without saying anything. This was literally the 3rd time in about an hour that someone was this rude to me. Just 10 minutes before that, a worker at a store got very angry at me for bringing my dog inside because she didn't see that she is a service dog in training. But instead of apologizing, after I politely explained she is a service dog in training, she scoffed and shot me a glare when I walked out. They didn't send me away, but I didn't feel welcome and wanted to train somewhere else where I did feel welcome. I wouldn't say that classifies as entitled, and of course she is within her rights to tell me this, though it doesn't need to be rude, but it does remind me of something I find myself asking a lot lately. Why do we feel the need to be so angry with each other all the time? Why can't we just talk to people anymore? Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this story. Puppy is doing well, by the way. We have our ups and downs, but lately it's been great, and she is such a well-behaved dog. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.